Welcome to this deep dive. We're looking at Pastor Mark's sermon, A Fresh God Encounter, from the first Sunday of 2025.
Oh yeah, kicking off the new year with some spiritual reflection.
Exactly. So we're going to break down some of the key takeaways and uncover some hidden gems.
Okay.
Like, why does Pastor Mark bring up Pope Gregory III? And what's the significance of Abram's transformation at 99?
This sermon really tackles a universal human need, that desire for connection and guidance, especially as we're all facing a new year.
Yeah.
Pastor Mark uses powerful storytelling, drawing on those biblical figures and relatable anecdotes to explore this concept of God encounters
Right.
and their importance in navigating all those uncertainties in life.
He starts by connecting with something we're all familiar with, though, right? New Year's resolutions.
Yeah.
He even mentions that Swedish tradition, the Nyårslöf, which are basically those public promises for the new year.
Yeah.
It's like he's tapping into our collective desire for a fresh start.
Yeah. It's a clever way to grab the listener's attention. He's meeting us where we are, acknowledging that desire for positive change.
Yeah.
But he takes it a step further, suggesting that resolutions often fall short
Right.
without a deeper source of guidance.
Yeah.
It's as if he's saying, yes, set those goals, but where will you find that strength and direction to actually achieve them?
And that's what the idea of a God encounter comes in. But I'm curious, how does he actually define it?
Yeah.
Is it a feeling, an event, a shift in perspective?
Right.
And why the emphasis on fresh?
That's a great question. The sermon seems to imply that these encounters aren't just about a one-time spiritual high.
Right.
He's pushing back against the idea that we can just coast on past experiences.
Yeah.
It's more about cultivating an ongoing dynamic relationship with faith where we're actively seeking those moments of deeper connection with the divine.
Okay.
And fresh suggests that we shouldn't settle for a stagnant faith, but rather be open to new revelations and a renewed sense of purpose.
He brings up some pretty heavy-hitting biblical figures to illustrate this point.
Right.
Jacob, Joseph, Gideon, David. These aren't exactly everyday folks.
Yeah.
What's the significance of using those examples?
By highlighting these figures, who are often seen as giants of faith,
Yeah.
Pastor Mark is actually humanizing the concept of God encounters.
Go.
He reminds us that even those who had incredible experiences with God, those who achieved great things, still needed fresh encounters throughout their lives.
Right.
It reinforces the idea that no matter how strong our faith might be, we all stumble, we all need guidance,
Yeah.
and we all benefit from those moments of renewed connection with the divine.
It's interesting that you point out that human element because he also uses the story of Abram,
Yes.
who receives a new name and a powerful promise from God at 99.
Wow.
It's never too late.
Exactly. Abram's transformation at such a late stage in life underscores that message. It's never too late for a fresh encounter and a complete life change. It reminds us that God can work in and through us, regardless of our age or past experiences. And the fact that God changes Abram's name to Abraham adds another layer of meaning.
Right.
It's not just a superficial change,
Yeah.
but a profound shift in identity, hinting at that deep transformation a true God encounter can bring.
But here's where things get really intriguing. Pastor Mark mentions that after receiving this incredible promise, Abram actually experiences 13 years of silence
Oh, wow.
after making some questionable choices. 13 years. That's longer than some people's entire spiritual journeys.
Yeah.
What are we to make of that? Does God withdraw when we mess up?
This detail is fascinating because it raises some really important questions about the nature of God's presence in our lives. Does God turn away from us when we make mistakes? Or is it us who lose sight of him in the midst of our struggles and poor choices?
Yeah.
The sermon seems to suggest that even in those periods of silence, even when we feel distant from God, he's still working behind the scenes, perhaps using that time to refine us, teach us, and prepare us for what's next.
So those times when we feel lost or disconnected from our faith, those might actually be crucial periods of growth and preparation.
That's one way to interpret it.
Yeah.
It's a comforting thought for anyone who's ever felt like they've messed up or strayed too far.
Yeah.
It suggests that even our mistakes and missteps can be woven into a larger tapestry,
Right.
a divine plan that's unfolding in ways we may not always understand.
So we've been unpacking this whole idea of needing fresh encounters with God, and we've seen how even, those biblical giants needed them.
Yeah.
Then there's this intriguing concept of God working even in silence.
Right.
But how do we actually apply this to our lives?
Well, that's where Pastor Mark's call to action comes in.
Okay.
He challenges the listeners to participate in Pray It Forward, a 21-day period of prayer and fasting.
Pray it forward. I'm really curious about that concept. It's
Yeah.
not just pray for yourself or even pray for others. There's
No.
something more to it, isn't there?
Absolutely. The name itself is quite clever.
Yeah.
It implies that the benefits of seeking a fresh encounter with God, well, they aren't meant to be hoarded or kept to ourselves. Instead, they should ripple outwards, impacting those around us.
It's like the spiritual version of paying it forward. You experience a blessing and then you pass it on to someone else.
That's a great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it aligns with the overall message of the sermon, which
Yeah.
is that a fresh God encounter isn't just about personal transformation.
Right.
It empowers us to make a difference in the world around us.
Hearing you explain this is making me think about something.
Okay.
Pastor Mark briefly mentioned Pope Gregory III
Mm-hmm.
in connection with New Year's Day.
Right.
It felt a bit random at first, but now I'm wondering if there's a deeper meaning there.
You're right to pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those subtle details that could easily be missed,
Yeah.
but it adds another layer to the message.
Okay.
Remember, Pastor Mark is talking about fresh starts and new beginnings. By bringing up Pope Gregory XIII, who introduced the Gregorian calendar that we still use today,
Yeah.
he's subtly acknowledging the human element in our perception of time.
Okay.
It's as if he's saying, yes, we mark time in this way, but a true fresh start, a spiritual renewal, transcends our human constructs.
That's an interesting connection. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if we often limit ourselves by focusing on those calendar-based fresh starts instead of those deeper spiritual renewals that Pastor Mark is emphasizing. What do you think, listener?
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're going through the motions of starting fresh but not really experiencing a deep inner change?
That's a great question to reflect on. It reminds me of something else that Pastor Mark touches on.
Yeah.
The idea that even the most godly figures in the Bible needed those fresh encounters with God. He used examples like Jacob, Joseph, and David,
Right.
emphasizing that they weren't perfect. They stumbled, they made mistakes, just like we do.
I remember that he was making the point that we shouldn't put those biblical figures on a pedestal and think
Right.
we could never measure up.
Exactly. And I think there's a really important message in that for us today.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in this idea that faith is about achieving some level of flawless perfection.
Right.
But that's just not realistic.
Yeah.
The journey of faith is messy.
Uh-huh.
It's full of ups and downs,
Yeah.
moments of clarity and moments of doubt.
Right.
And those imperfections, those times when we stumble and need to reconnect with God,
Yeah.
those are all part of the process.
It's encouraging to hear you say that. It takes the pressure off a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes the whole idea of seeking a fresh encounter less daunting and more relatable.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Pastor Mark's message is one of hope and encouragement.
Hmm.
He's reminding us that we're not alone in this journey.
Right.
We all need those fresh encounters with God to guide us, strengthen us,
Yeah.
and help us navigate the complexities of life.
And perhaps those moments of silence, those times when we feel lost or unsure,
Yeah,
are actually part of that process too.
right.
It's in those quiet spaces that God might be working in ways we can't yet see.
That's a beautiful thought. It invites us to trust in God's timing and to believe that even when things don't make sense, there's a bigger plan unfolding.
This deep dive has been really insightful so far.
Yeah.
There's so much to unpack in this sermon. I'm eager to hear what other gems we might uncover as we continue exploring a fresh God encounter in part 3.
Welcome back to our deep dive into a fresh God encounter.
Yeah.
As we've been discussing this sermon,
Yeah.
one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea that we shouldn't settle for a stagnant faith.
Mm.
It's so easy to get comfortable, to rely on those past experiences.
Right.
But Pastor Mark is challenging us to seek something more,
Yeah.
something deeper.
He is, isn't he? And I think that challenge is particularly relevant in today's world.
Right.
We're bombarded with information and distractions.
With that constant pressure to achieve and succeed, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters,
Right.
to let our spiritual lives become just another item on our to-do list.
It's almost like we expect instant gratification in every area of our lives,
Yeah.
including our faith.
Right.
But as we talked about earlier with Abram's story and those 13 years of silence, sometimes God works on a different timeline.
That's such a crucial point.
Mhm.
We live in a culture of instant everything.
Yeah.
Instant news, instant communication, instant results.
Right.
But spiritual growth,
Yeah.
true transformation, takes time.
Mm-hmm.
It requires patience, persistence,
Yeah.
and a willingness to surrender to a process we may not always fully understand.
That resonates with me. I know in my own life, I've often felt frustrated when I didn't see immediate answers to my prayers or
Right.
when I felt stuck in a spiritual rut. But maybe, as Pastor Mark suggests,
Wow.
those periods of silence, of waiting, are actually opportunities for God to work in ways I couldn't have imagined.
Yeah.
What do you think, listener?
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced those seasons of waiting in your own faith journey?
I think many of us can relate to that feeling.
Right.
And this sermon offers a different perspective,
Okay.
encouraging us to view those times not as setbacks,
Right.
but as potential turning points,
Uh-huh.
moments where God might be preparing us for something new.
That's a powerful shift in thinking.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something else we touched on earlier.
Okay.
The idea that pray it forward isn't just about personal gain,
Right.
but about extending those blessings to others.
Hmm.
It's outward focused,
Yeah.
which seems to be a recurring theme throughout the sermon.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
And I think that outward focus is a key characteristic of a fresh God encounter.
Okay.
It's not just about receiving something from God.
Right.
It's about being empowered to give, to serve,
Yeah.
to make a difference in the world around us.
So it's not just about transforming ourselves. Right.
But about allowing that transformation to flow outwards,
Mhm.
to touch the lives of others. It's like that ripple effect we talked about earlier.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's one way to recognize a genuine God encounter.
Okay.
It moves us beyond ourselves, inspires us to act,
Mm-hmm.
to love, to serve in ways we hadn't before.
This deep dive has given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
I'm feeling inspired to embrace this idea of actively seeking fresh encounters with God and allowing those experiences to shape not just my own life,
Right.
but the lives of those around me.
Yeah.
How about you, listener?
Yeah.
What resonated with you most from Pastor Mark's message?
And as we wrap up, I think it's worth reiterating that it's never too late for a fresh start,
Yeah?
a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper connection with the divine, whether you're at the beginning of your faith journey or you've been walking this path for years.
Right.
Pastor Mark's message invites us all to seek those transformative encounters with God
Yeah.
and to allow them to guide us towards a more fulfilling and impactful life. Beautifully said.
Okay.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into a fresh God encounter.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration and reflection.
Right.
We hope it's left you with a renewed sense of hope and inspiration as you continue to seek those fresh encounters with God in your own life.